It was a warm Sunday afternoon, and I stood in my daughter's backyard, feeling the weight of years of hard work in my hands. The grill was smoking, the lemonade sweating in my glass, and for a moment, I allowed myself to breathe, truly breathe. After everything, this was the kind of moment I had worked my whole life for. It was Jenna's first housewarming, her first real home. The place I had fought tooth and nail for, the one I had saved every penny for, the house I dreamed of for years, and, if I'm being honest, almost bled for. The yard was filled with laughter, the kind that only summer could bring, the easy, carefree sound that made you think life was finally settling into place. As I laid out forks beside the salad bowl, everything seemed perfect. But then my son-in-law, Ryan, tapped his glass, and the laughter around us faded. His smile stretched across his face in that way he does when he thinks he's about to say something charming. "Hey, everyone," Ryan said, raising his beer as everyone turned toward him. "I just want to thank Elaine for helping Jenna and me start our life together." I smiled politely, waiting for the usual gratitude. But then Ryan looked straight at me, his voice cutting through the quiet, echoing across the tables. "So, Mom, when are you bringing your stuff over?" My fingers tightened around my glass of lemonade. The guests laughed, assuming he was joking. He wasn't. He gestured toward his mother, Lorraine, who was already smiling like she knew exactly what was coming. "She'll be moving in soon," Ryan said. "No point in her wasting money on rent when we've got the space." I felt the color drain from my face. The room fell silent. Lorraine lifted her glass, a quiet satisfaction in her smile, as if the house I had given my daughter had somehow transformed into her retirement plan. Standing there in the heat, the weight of the moment hit me. The joy of the occasion was still there, but something else had cracked, something I hadn't expected, the trust I'd spent years building. That moment, standing in the backyard, was when I realized something. The biggest mistake I had made wasn't buying the house. It was trusting the people I had handed the keys to. 3 months before that disastrous barbecue, the house was just a dream. A quiet promise sitting at the end of a maple-lined street. I remember the first time I stepped inside, all alone, the floor smelling faintly of fresh varnish, the kind that promises hope but carries the weight of exhaustion too. Sunlight poured into the living room, blessing the space as I stood there, listening to the realtor's voice as it faded into the background. I had driven there just to look, or so I told myself. But truth be told, I'd come there with the feeling that something important, had been waiting for me. I walked through the small kitchen, warm and inviting, a space where Jenna and I could have long conversations over late-night cups of tea. Then, I stepped into what would be her future bedroom, and for a brief moment, I pictured her there, pulling on a cardigan, humming the way she used to when she was a little girl. As I walked through that house, the memories of all the double shifts I had worked to make sure my daughter didn't grow up the way I had, counting pennies and scraping by, came rushing back. I wasn't planning to buy it. But then, the responsible part of me cracked. The truth was, sometimes, when life offers you something that feels like it was made just for you, plans go out the window. It was at that very moment that my phone buzzed in my pocket, and it was Frank. "Did you eat yet?" he asked. I told him where I was, expecting a sigh or a lecture on impulsive decisions. But instead, he just said, "I'll be there in 10 minutes." When he arrived, he stepped into the kitchen beside me, wiping sawdust off his jeans as if he'd just walked out of his garage. "Nice bones," he murmured, tapping the doorframe, his voice soft. "Solid foundation. You wouldn't have to worry about it settling wrong." I tilted my head at him. "I only came to look." He smiled, that gentle smile that made everything feel less sharp. "You've been looking for 2 years, Elaine. Maybe it's time you let yourself choose something." I didn't say anything. I wandered through the hallway again, my hand brushing the cool banister, thinking of the apartment where Jenna grew up. A cramped 2-bedroom place where neighbors fought through the walls, and radiators clanged like anvils. But Jenna never complained. She just read her books in the corner of the couch, did her homework on a fold-out table we had to put away every night. She was always so gentle, so grateful. Maybe too gentle for a world that doesn't hesitate to take advantage of softness. Frank followed me into the second bedroom. "You're thinking yourself into circles," he said. "You want the place. Say it out loud." I breathed in deeply, the scent of fresh paint filling my chest. "I want it." That was all it took. The realtor reappeared with papers and numbers. I felt my stomach twist in the way it always does before big decisions. But I'd lived long enough to recognize fear when it disguised itself as practicality. I signed the papers, my hand trembling, and Frank placed his hand over mine. Later that evening, I called Jenna. She was grading math quizzes, her voice soft with surprise when I told her I had put an offer on a house. Not for me, but for her. For her future. For everything she had worked for and everything I wanted her to have. "Mom," she whispered. "You don't have to do that." "I know," I said, "but I want to." She cried quietly on the phone, like she always did when she was overwhelmed. I kept my voice steady, even as tears blurred the stack of mortgage documents in front of me. I had promised myself that she would have the choices I never had. This house was a promise. Before I go on, if you're enjoying this story, please give this video a like. It really helps me out, and I would love to hear from you in the comments. Where are you listening from? Let me know which city you're tuning in from, so I can see how far my story has traveled. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this one. The house was officially ours. The papers were signed, the keys handed over, and I could feel the weight of it all settling into place. Jenna and I spent a few hours there, walking through the empty rooms. She couldn't stop smiling, her eyes shining with that same bright excitement I had seen in her when she was a little girl. But even then, something tugged at my chest, a feeling I couldn't shake. The week after we finalized the deal, I went over to the house after work, the metal of the car still warm from the attorney's office. The sun had just begun to dip below the horizon, casting the neighborhood in that soft golden glow. As I walked through the empty rooms, the quiet echo of my footsteps was the only sound. It was a strange kind of peace, the kind that says, "You did it." A few days later, I invited Jenna to come see it in person. She arrived with a bouquet of wildflowers, her eyes sparkling with an innocence that made me think of the little girl who used to run through the grocery aisles pretending they were mountain trails. As she stepped inside, she froze, her eyes wide, taking in the house as though she had just walked into a dream. "Mom," she whispered, "it's beautiful." Her voice cracked slightly, but she smiled, as if the house had given her something she hadn't even known she needed. She moved from room to room, touching window sills, tracing the grain of the kitchen counters, her fingers lingering like she couldn't quite believe it was all real. When she reached the back deck, she stepped outside, the breeze lifting her hair. I stood in the doorway, watching her absorb the moment. It was her moment, and I was just a part of it. I waited until she turned to me before I told her the truth, the house would be hers before the wedding. The paperwork was already in progress. She would have a place to call her own, no matter what storms life brought. Her breath hitched. The bouquet of wildflowers trembled in her hand. "Why would you do something this big?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because you deserve safety," I said. "And because life is unpredictable. I want you to have something no one can take from you." And for a moment, everything felt right. She hugged me tightly, her shoulders shaking with quiet tears. There was a peace in that moment, a warmth that spread through me, a sense of completeness. The kind of peace mothers pray for, but rarely get to hold. How are you feeling so far? If this story is resonating with you, hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments. And tell me, have you ever made a big decision like this for someone you love? I'd love to hear your stories. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that celebrate standing your ground and reclaiming your life. The peace I had felt didn't last long, though. 2 days later, Ryan asked to see the house. He arrived with a 6-pack of iced tea and a polite smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Jenna showed him around, her voice soft with pride. I hung back, watching him carefully. He seemed to be examining every detail, lingering a little too long on the spare bedrooms. This is generous, he said, nodding toward me. You didn't have to do all this. I know, I replied calmly. But I wanted Jenna to start her marriage with a real foundation. Ryan nodded, though something in his expression flickered, confusion, maybe even disappointment. But I didn't know why. Not yet. When we reached the kitchen, Ryan glanced toward the hallway. 3 bedrooms, he said, tapping the counter lightly. That's a lot of space. It gives room for growth, I said. A home office, a guest room. Maybe children one day. Jenna squeezed his arm playfully, but Ryan didn't return the gesture. He was still looking at the layout, his mind working, calculating something I couldn't yet understand. Eventually, he stepped out onto the deck, pulling out his phone. Just sending a picture to my mom, he said, almost too casually. I stiffened. Something about that felt off. His mother had already made it clear how she felt about the house, about Jenna and Ryan living on their own. I couldn't help but feel a nagging sense of unease. When Ryan came back inside, he wore that same polite smile. Lorraine wants to drop by sometime this week to see the place, he said casually. I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. That's fine, as long as Jenna is here. But I didn't have the feeling Lorraine was waiting for an invitation. She had already decided that she was part of the picture. I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think I was overreacting? Or was there something about Lorraine's behavior that set off alarm bells for you too? Drop your thoughts in the comments and share your experiences. This is a place to connect, and your story might just help someone else. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. 3 days later, I arrived with a box of fresh towels, expecting a quiet visit. But instead, I found a silver sedan already parked in the driveway. The front door was unlocked. Inside, Lorraine stood in the living room, coat draped over a dining chair, turning slowly as if appraising a property she planned to buy. Oh, Elaine, she said, pretending surprise. Ryan gave me a key. I hope you don't mind. I thought I'd help get things started. This house has so much potential. I could feel the coolness settle in my chest. There were 2 boxes beside her, neatly taped and labeled, Elle's books and winter clothes. She wasn't here for a visit. She was here to move in. Lorraine, I said, my voice calm but firm. This house isn't set up yet, and only Jenna and I should have keys right now. Her smile faltered, but she quickly recovered. I just wanted to help. It's not like I was planning to stay tonight. I took a deep breath, trying to stay composed. I need that key back, I said, my voice steady. And these boxes can't stay. Her eyes shimmered with offended disbelief. I thought we were family, she said, as if I had betrayed her. We are, I said gently. But Jenna needs to walk into her marriage with her own space. Let's respect that. After a long moment, she handed me the key. But even as I left, carrying her boxes to her car, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't a retreat. It was reconnaissance. And I knew she would be back. Can you believe that? What would you have done in my shoes? Tell me in the comments below. And if you've ever been in a situation like this, I want to hear from you. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your peace. The days went by, and life, as it always does, continued. But I knew things weren't over yet. The house was waiting, but so was the storm. The weeks that followed were filled with small victories, quiet moments of growth, and uncomfortable realizations. Ryan, though still struggling, was starting to understand. It wasn't immediate, but the change was slow and steady, like water wearing down stone. He didn't fully grasp the weight of his mother's influence, but he was beginning to see how it was affecting Jenna. There were moments when I thought the tension between all of us might snap. Jenna was caught between wanting to please everyone, her fiancé, her mother, and, yes, even Lorraine, and wanting to stand up for herself. Every time Lorraine would show up unannounced or offer unsolicited advice, Jenna would retreat just a little more. She was like a plant growing in the shade, needing the sunlight to thrive but too afraid to break free of the shadows. But that was the thing about being a mother, you learn to spot when your child is on the edge of a breakdown, even before they do. And that day, when I saw Jenna retreat into herself again, I knew it was time to have the conversation that we'd both been avoiding. It was one quiet afternoon, just before the housewarming party we were planning. Jenna was sitting on the couch, flipping through a magazine, but her mind was clearly elsewhere. The weight of her silence filled the room, thick and suffocating. I could feel it, too. Something had to change. "Jenna," I said, my voice soft but firm. "You've been holding everything inside for so long. I can see it. And I know you. You need to talk to me. Tell me what's going on." She looked up at me, her eyes wide and brimming with emotion. "Mom, I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to make it right between me and Ryan. He's not seeing it. He doesn't see what his mom is doing. And every time I try to speak up, it's like I'm being unreasonable. I'm the one who's crazy. And I hate it." Her words broke something inside of me, a dam I didn't know I had built up. There it was, her pain, her confusion, her fear. I could hear it in her voice, feel it in the way she clutched the magazine, her fingers turning the pages absently, as if she was trying to distract herself from the storm inside. "You're not crazy," I said, my voice steady but full of conviction. "And you're not alone. You don't have to carry this by yourself, Jenna. I'm here. But you have to stand up for yourself. You have to let him know that this isn't just about his mom. This is about you, about your life, your marriage. You have to make him see it." Her eyes welled up with tears, the fight in her breaking, just for a moment. "But I don't want to lose him, Mom. I don't want to fight with him. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm the one who's messing things up?" I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts before speaking again. "Jenna, sometimes standing your ground feels like you're going to lose everything. But you don't lose yourself in the process. This is your life. Your future. And if Ryan loves you the way I know he does, then he will hear you. He will see you. But you have to speak up. You have to make your voice louder than the fear of losing him. Trust me, you won't lose yourself in this. You will find your strength." For a moment, we sat there in silence, the weight of my words settling between us. Jenna wiped her eyes, trying to compose herself. "I don't know if I can do it, Mom. I don't know if I can be that strong." I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be honest. Honest with yourself and with him. That's the first step. How are you feeling so far?" I can feel the tension building, and I know a lot of you can relate to what Jenna's going through. Have you ever had to find your voice in a relationship, even when it felt like you might lose everything? Please share your thoughts and stories in the comments. You're not alone in this journey. And if you're new here, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your peace. The days leading up to the housewarming were filled with a nervous energy. Jenna seemed more distant than usual, but I could see the determination building in her eyes. She wasn't there yet, but she was ready to fight for herself. I could feel it in the way she carried herself, a quiet resolve starting to replace the fear that had been consuming her for so long. And then, the day of the barbecue arrived. The yard was filled with people, the familiar chatter of friends and neighbors filling the air. The sun was shining, the lemonade was chilling, and I was standing at the grill, trying to focus on anything but the storm that was coming. Ryan had been quieter than usual, his smile strained. I could tell he was walking a fine line between trying to keep everyone happy and trying to navigate the tension between his fiancée and his mother. But what I didn't expect was what happened next. The moment came when the laughter around us faded. Ryan stood up, tapping his glass, his voice cutting through the air, louder than it had been before. "So, Elaine," he said, looking right at me, "when are you bringing your stuff over?" The words hit me like a slap in the face. My grip on the lemonade pitcher tightened, my fingers trembling, but I kept my voice steady. I stepped forward, because I could see that Jenna couldn't find her voice just yet. She was paralyzed by the weight of the moment. "This house isn't prepared for another resident," I said calmly, my voice carrying over the quiet murmur of the crowd. "And the deed is already in Jenna's name." The air thickened, the moment stretching on. Lorraine's eyes narrowed, and she let out a soft, bitter laugh, one that said everything. "So, you won't allow it to change?" she asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. I stepped closer, my gaze steady. "It's not control, Lorraine. It's protection. Something every mother understands." Ryan's jaw tightened. He didn't say anything, but the hurt in his eyes was unmistakable. And then, Jenna spoke, her voice trembling but firm. "Ryan, you made a decision without me, and you announced it like it was a gift." Lorraine, ever the actress, placed a hand on her chest, feigning shock. "I just can't handle being unwelcome in my own family," she whispered, her voice dripping with guilt. I had seen this act before, countless times in my nursing career. The drama, the manipulation, the emotional guilt-tripping. But this time, I wasn't going to fall for it. "Lorraine," I said, my voice steady, "no one here is your enemy. But you don't get to rewrite whose home this is." And with that, the tension in the yard thickened. The storm was finally here, and I wasn't backing down. Wow. Can you believe that? How would you have handled that situation? Have you ever had to stand your ground like Jenna did? Share your thoughts, your experiences, and any advice you might have for someone going through something similar. And if you haven't already, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories about finding your strength and standing firm. The weeks that followed were hard. Ryan and Lorraine retreated, but Jenna was stronger. She wasn't backing down anymore. And while it wasn't perfect, the house was slowly becoming a home built on understanding, on standing your ground, and on knowing when to protect what matters most. The storm hadn't passed, but I knew one thing for sure: it was a battle worth fighting. It wasn't long before I realized that the house I had bought for Jenna was becoming something far more complicated than a home. It was becoming a battleground. I kept telling myself that it was just the beginning of their life together, that maybe I was being overly cautious, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. I could feel it, like a storm cloud on the horizon. The next few weeks were a blur of small incidents that, at first, seemed insignificant but began to stack up, piece by piece, like a puzzle I wasn't ready to solve. Lorraine kept helping around the house, dropping by unannounced with bags of groceries, towels, and decorations that weren't really her place to choose. Each time, I found myself bracing for her presence like a patient waiting for a storm to pass. But she wasn't passing. She was settling in, inch by inch. I knew what she was doing. She was staking a claim. One afternoon, I received a call from Jenna. She sounded strange, quieter than usual. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something," she said, her voice almost shaking. My heart sank. I immediately felt that old nurse instinct, the one that kicks in when you sense something's wrong even before the words are spoken. "Is everything okay?" I asked, my voice tight with concern. I think I made a mistake," she said softly. "I don't know if I'm ready for all of this. Ryan, he's different. He's been different since we moved into the house. And it's not just him. It's his mom. She's everywhere, Mom. She won't give us space." My mind raced. I had known this was coming, but hearing it from Jenna, hearing her voice quiver with uncertainty, was like a punch to the gut. "Jenna," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "you've always known how important it was for you to have a life of your own. This house, it's your place. And no one, not even Ryan's mom, gets to take that away from you." She sighed. "I don't know what to do. Ryan doesn't see it. He doesn't see how controlling she is, how everything she does feels like it's about her. Not us. Not me." My heart ached for her, but I also knew this was a lesson she had to learn for herself. I had given her the house, yes, but what she needed now was something far harder to offer: strength. The strength to stand up for herself. The strength to protect what was hers, even if it meant pushing back against people she loved. I know this story is hitting home for some of you. If you've been through something like this, where someone tries to overstep boundaries in your home, or in your life, please share your thoughts in the comments. You're not alone. And if you're enjoying the journey so far, please give this video a like. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about reclaiming control and standing strong. The next big blow came unexpectedly. Ryan and Jenna invited me to dinner at their place one evening, and I agreed, eager to see how they were doing after everything. But from the moment I walked through the door, I could tell something was off. The air was thick with tension, the kind that never quite seems to dissipate. Lorraine was there, of course, standing in the kitchen as if she owned it, a dish rag in her hand, like she was preparing to host dinner herself. Ryan smiled when I walked in, but it wasn't the easy smile I remembered. It was tight, guarded, like he was already calculating what was about to happen. Jenna looked uncomfortable, her eyes darting between Ryan and Lorraine, but she smiled, if only out of politeness. It didn't take long before I noticed what was really happening. Ryan was caught in the middle. He wasn't defending his fiancée, he wasn't standing by her. Instead, he seemed to be letting his mother call the shots, letting her run the show like he had no say in it. And that was when I realized, he hadn't changed. He was still the same boy I had met years ago, only now, he was trying to hold on to two worlds that couldn't exist in harmony. Dinner was a strange affair, full of polite conversation that felt more like a performance. Lorraine was on one side of the table, gently steering the conversation to topics that would let her weigh in on every detail. Ryan was quieter than usual, retreating further into the background, letting his mother's voice fill the space. And Jenna, my sweet Jenna, was shrinking before my eyes, becoming smaller with every word that came out of Lorraine's mouth. At some point, I couldn't take it anymore. It wasn't about the food, or the small talk. It was about Jenna. She wasn't being heard. She wasn't being seen. And it was breaking my heart. I excused myself to the bathroom, needing a moment to collect my thoughts. As I stood there, staring at my reflection in the mirror, I realized how much this was hurting her. But more than that, I realized something else. This wasn't just about Jenna. It was about me. It was about the promise I had made to her when I bought that house. I promised her she would have a place of safety. A place that was hers. And I wasn't going to let anyone take that from her. When I returned to the table, Lorraine was talking about wedding plans again, overstepping in the most graceful way she knew how. But this time, something inside me snapped. I leaned forward, my voice calm but firm. "Lorraine," I said, looking her directly in the eye, "I think it's time we let Jenna make her own decisions. About her wedding. About her life. About her home. The room fell silent. Ryan stiffened, his eyes darting between us, but he didn't say a word. Lorraine's smile faltered, just for a second, before she masked it with a thin layer of politeness. "Oh, of course," she said smoothly. "I'm only trying to help." "No," I replied, my voice steady, "you're not helping. You're controlling. And it's time you respected that this is Jenna's life, not yours." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, I thought maybe I'd gone too far. But then Jenna, sitting quietly next to Ryan, spoke up. Her voice was soft but firm. "I've been trying to say that for months, Mom," she said, her eyes meeting mine, full of both fear and relief. "I just didn't know how." That was the moment I knew she was starting to understand. That was the moment I knew she was starting to stand her ground. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to confront someone overstepping their boundaries in your life? How did you handle it? If you've dealt with a similar situation, share your story. We're all in this together. And if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and do so. I have so many more stories to share. Lorraine's demeanor shifted after that night. There was still tension between all of us, but I could see her pulling back just a little, as if she was beginning to understand that this house, this life, was no longer hers to control. Ryan, too, was starting to change. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But I could see cracks forming in the walls of the life he had been building under his mother's watchful eye. And as I watched Jenna begin to find her voice, I realized that the house wasn't just a place. It was a lesson. A lesson about standing up for what's yours. A lesson about setting boundaries, even when it feels impossible. The storm was far from over, but for the first time, I felt like we might just make it through. I'm so glad you're here with me on this journey. If this story has inspired you, please share it. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your peace. You're not alone in this. Let's keep going, more to come in the next part. It's strange how a storm can break things apart and rebuild them at the same time. After that housewarming, the tension between us all simmered for a while, still there, like an undercurrent, but less visible on the surface. Lorraine kept her distance, but I could see the cracks in her carefully constructed facade. She wasn't backing down, not entirely, but she was beginning to understand that the ground beneath her was no longer solid. And Ryan, he was somewhere between still trying to please his mother and realizing that he had to choose where his loyalty truly lay. But Jenna, my brave, beautiful Jenna, she had found her voice. It wasn't instantaneous. There were moments when she second-guessed herself, moments when the fear would creep back in, making her question whether standing up for herself had been worth it. But each day, she grew a little stronger. She started speaking up, not just to Ryan, but to everyone. She set clear boundaries and, more importantly, she started to understand the value of those boundaries. One evening, after work, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, flipping through an old photo album of Jenna's childhood. The memories hit me like a wave, her first steps, the messy haircuts, the times when I would watch her sleep, wondering if I was doing enough, giving her enough. But looking at those photos, I realized that everything I had done, everything, was for moments like this. Jenna had a life ahead of her, a life that was hers to shape. And I had given her that chance. It was all I'd ever wanted for her. I was lost in thought when Jenna walked into the kitchen, a soft smile on her face. There was something different about her, something lighter, as if the weight of the world had finally started to lift off her shoulders. "Mom," she said, sitting down across from me. "I need to tell you something." I looked up, meeting her eyes. "What's on your mind, sweetheart?" She hesitated for just a moment, then took a deep breath. "Ryan and I had a long talk. About everything. About the house. About his mom. About us. My heart skipped a beat. Was this it? Was she finally going to make a decision, take a stand? I told him everything, she continued, her voice steady, all the things I've been afraid to say. I told him that I need him to see me. That I need him to choose me, not his mom. And he listened, Mom. He really listened. I could see the relief in her eyes, the quiet pride that came with speaking her truth. And? I asked gently, not wanting to interrupt the moment. She smiled, that bright, genuine smile I hadn't seen in weeks. He promised me he would do better. He promised he would stand by me, not just now, but always. And you know what? I think he means it. He said he was sorry for not seeing it sooner. I felt the lump in my throat grow, but I fought it down. That's good, sweetheart. I'm proud of you. It wasn't easy, but you did it. You spoke up for yourself. And that's something you'll carry with you for the rest of your life. She nodded, her eyes still shining. I didn't think I could, but I did. And I feel like I can breathe again. Like I'm not just living for everyone else. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the past few weeks settling between us like a quiet understanding. Jenna had finally found her voice. And I had done my job. My heart swelled with pride. Can you relate to Jenna's journey? Have you ever had to find your voice in a relationship or with family? Share your thoughts with me in the comments. And if you're finding strength in this story, make sure to like and subscribe. You're not alone in this, and there are more stories to come about standing your ground and reclaiming your peace. A few days later, the real test came. Lorraine showed up uninvited, again. But this time, it was different. She walked in with that same cold smile, but the energy in the house had shifted. There was no tension in the air, no looming threat of her taking over. Jenna and I were ready for this moment. Elaine, Lorraine said, her voice sweet as ever, I thought I'd drop by. I brought some things for the house. I know you're busy, so I wanted to help out. I could see Jenna stiffen beside me, her hand slipping into mine for support. But this time, there was no hesitation in her voice. Lorraine, she said, her voice calm but firm, we appreciate the offer, but this house is ours. I need you to respect that. I'm an adult, and I'm capable of managing my own home. The room fell quiet. Lorraine's eyes widened, and for a second, I saw the old manipulative look flicker across her face. But this time, Jenna didn't flinch. She stood her ground, and so did I. I didn't mean to step on anyone's toes, Lorraine said, trying to backtrack, but the damage had already been done. She could see the shift in us both, and it wasn't something she could easily undo. We understand, Jenna said, her voice steady. But this is our life now. And I need you to understand that. Lorraine hesitated, and then, for the first time in a long time, she nodded. It wasn't the smooth, practiced nod of someone trying to placate, but a reluctant acknowledgement that the rules had changed. She left shortly after, but the silence in the house that followed wasn't oppressive like it had been before. It was peaceful, like the calm after a storm. That moment was a breakthrough, wasn't it? I think a lot of us can relate to trying to set boundaries, especially with family. Tell me about a time when you had to stand up for yourself, what happened? Your story might help someone else find the courage to do the same. If you're enjoying this, please give a like, comment, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this one. In the weeks that followed, things slowly began to settle. Ryan and Jenna's relationship wasn't perfect, but it was stronger. He had learned to respect her boundaries, and she had learned to stand her ground, even when it was hard. Lorraine, well, she wasn't going anywhere, but she had started to understand that the rules had changed. And me? I had learned that sometimes the hardest thing isn't giving someone everything you have. It's letting them find their own way, even when it means stepping back and allowing them to fight their own battles. But that's the thing about love, it's not about control. It's about giving the people you love the strength to stand up for themselves. Jenna and I both learned that lesson. And for the first time in a long while, I felt at peace. I had given her everything I could, and now, it was her turn to take the reins. The house wasn't just a house anymore. It was a symbol of strength, of growth, and of the unshakable bond between a mother and her daughter. And that, I realized, was all I had ever wanted for her. And there it is. The journey of standing your ground, finding your voice, and reclaiming your peace. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment and let me know how you've handled situations like this. You're not alone. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for being here and following this journey with me. More stories about standing strong and finding peace are coming your way. Stay tuned.